We are the organization in conjunction with the Southside Greater Syracuse Homeowners Association. We've put on these series of political forums. We started about a month ago. We did them at Danforth. We did them at Corcoran High School. We did it at Fowler High School. And this is the last one. We thank you for being a part of this. Right now, the only candidate we have here is Chuck Keller. The other candidates have been notified, had agreed. Whether they come or not, that's not my issue. That's their business. So since no other candidate is here, we're gonna get started. This is Karen Lofton from Around the Town magazine, who's our moderator. But we thank you, Mr. Keller, for being here. We thank you, those of you who have arrived. And we're gonna get started right away, because I said we don't wanna waste people's time.
Well, it's very nice to meet you, Mr. Keller, and thank you so much for coming. If you would mind, take a few minutes just to tell us a little bit, introduce yourself, tell us who you are.
Obviously, my name is Chuck Keller. I'm an attorney, I'm running for district attorney. I'll tell you a little bit about my background and who I am, and then I'll tell you about why I'm in this race. I'm originally from Massachusetts. I come from a police officer family, law enforcement family. My father recently passed away. He was a police officer for 30 years. I have two brothers and a sister who are police officers. So I have a lot of experience in the criminal justice system growing up. When I went to college, my mother thought I should be an actor, but I don't have the looks or the haircut for it. So the alternative that everybody does, I went to law school. I never actually met a lawyer, didn't know really what they did or how it worked. I knew a lot of cops, didn't know any lawyers. Got out, got my first job working for the Hiscock Legal Aid Society, doing public interest work. Sort of cut my teeth doing that kind of criminal defense work in the community. And it turns out, it's like winning the lottery. I had no intentions of that being my career. I fell into it literally by accident, and it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened because I love what I do. Basically what I do in my career is I help people. That's what I do. I spent time working at the Legal Aid Society. From there, I went to the law school and I taught law for 3 years. And then I've been, essentially since then, I've been out in private practice for the last, 15 years, 15 years, running my own business in town. Mostly what I do is criminal defense work, but I also do some family court work when necessary. And frankly, most of the time I take most of the cases in family court just to help people out, because I think everybody deserves representation. So that's about me. Why am I in this race? I'm in this race because I'm in the courts, the criminal courts in this community every single day. And when I see what I see, I don't believe that we can, but we have to do better than what I see. The criminal justice system functions when you have three working pieces. You have to have trained, competent, caring judges. You have to have zealous, professional defense attorneys, but you also need to have well-trained, ethical, and thoughtful prosecutors. And we don't have that in this community. And the rot starts at the head. And what do I mean by that? I'll give you some examples. The example I give is this. If you are the victim of a domestic violence crime, there's a court called the Integrated Domestic Violence Court where you would go. So you're a victim of this crime, and you want to go to court and see what's happening to the person who hurt you. You go to court, you walk in there, they call the calendar, the judge comes out, the judge looks at an empty table. A lot like the one I'm standing at right now. It says, do we have a DA? Everybody kind of looks around. I don't know. Somebody clerk gets on a phone, makes a call. Nobody picks up. And then somebody comes in and goes, oh, we got this email. Oh, we have some notes and an email to the judge about the cases. And nobody shows up. The judge just says, well, we can't do anything with this. Let's come back in a month. Let's come back in 2 months. Nothing happens. Now imagine you're the victim of, you're the victim of a crime. You want to know what's going on. and you show up, you take the time, maybe you take time off from work, because they don't do courts at night. You take time off, you maybe get childcare, and you come down and you really want to know what's going on, and you're denied that. And on the flip side of that coin is, let's imagine you were a loved one or caught up in the criminal justice system. Maybe rightfully or wrongfully so, it doesn't matter. And you go down to support your loved one to see what's going on with their case, and the same thing happens, nothing. We can have a debate in theory about various policies, how to handle certain types of cases and certain types of defendants, but before you can have a debate about policy, you have to show up, right? And that's not happening. Now, when my opponent, Mr. Fitzpatrick, was confronted with that, instead of saying to himself, wow, I should look into that, that's something that's concerning to me, his response was, oh, Keller's lying, which is absurd considering anybody can pull transcripts and see how often DAs aren't there. And the other reason is, I suppose I would say, is that the hill I choose to die on, to make something up, right? That they don't go to this particular court. And by the way, that applies in town and village courts every night. If you have a case in town and village courts, you're not going to see a DA or a prosecutor out there, and nothing happens. The criminal justice system, and I don't care whether you think everybody should be locked up, nobody should be locked up, or somewhere in between. The criminal justice system does not function if it doesn't happen. That's what's going on. And we can do better. We can certainly do better than that. It wastes time, it wastes money, it doesn't compensate victims, it doesn't give people due process. It's a tragedy. It's for lack of a better word, it's criminal. How bad it is. It's criminal. And in the last few years, it's gotten even worse. After COVID, it's tough to find, you go to a restaurant, they say, well, we're having trouble finding servers. We're having trouble finding snowplow drivers. Well, lawyers too. So the DA's office, though, once COVID got passed, so many people jumped ship and left that office because of how toxic it is, that they had nobody to send to court, the first assistant. Now, I hadn't seen a first assistant show up in a courtroom 25 years of my doing this. And now I start seeing a first assistant showing up in misdemeanor court because they don't have a body to show up. Again, something is wrong. People get hired and they get out. Those lifetime prosecutors, when they get the chance to jump ship, they get out because it's not a place you want to work. It has to change culturally. That's what I want to do. I'm a teacher. I teach law. I teach new attorneys how to practice law. That's what I do. I want to bring that kind of character and professionalism to the DA's office and be responsive to the community. Listen, it doesn't matter what you do in life. You will make mistakes. We may disagree about certain issues, but two things. One, I should be accountable for mistakes I made, because if you can't admit you made a mistake, you can't fix it. The second thing is, you have to be responsive when people want answers. And I don't think either of those things are happening right now. So that's why I'm in this thing. I got two daughters. People will say, you're a defense attorney, why do you want to be DA? Don't you represent people in charge? Okay, sure I do. I live in this community. I have two daughters. Nobody wants to see crime rampant. Nobody wants to see people properly charged, let go. And again, we can debate about any particular person about whether or not they should get a break or not. But before we do that, you have to show up.
I appreciate your response. I don't know, do you need him to speak into the microphone so it can be heard a little bit better?
How about is this better? Is it on?
Is it on? It's not on? I do appreciate your response, Mr. Keller, and while he's adjusting the microphone. You did use some heavy words against the current district attorney's office, like lack of due process, riding at the head, and equal justice to some degree for all, and it must need a change. However, I want to take the moment to introduce myself. I am a single mother, and I'm an African-American woman, a black woman, a mother of young men whose relationship with the criminal justice system has historically not always been so beneficial or equal in that regard. So when you say the district attorney's office rots at the head, how is it going to look different when you take it?
So I absolutely, so it's always awkward as a person. I'm not a person of color. I've never experienced firsthand the kind of things that people of color experience in the criminal justice system. Just, I haven't. But I see it. And I've seen it for more than 20 years. And what goes on, and anybody who doesn't think that that goes on, anybody who thinks the criminal justice system treats people of color fairly, they haven't been there. And again, the first step in solving a problem is recognizing there is a problem. You know, nobody, how to put this, everything gets broken down into these little sound bites. It's always black or white. And most things aren't black or white, they're gray. There are distinctions that have to be made. You don't have to say, we shouldn't incarcerate or lock up anybody, right? But you don't have to, but on the flip side of that coin, it's lock up everybody is not a solution either. Because that falls disproportionately on, frankly, a lot of the people I see in this room. And certainly on people who are otherwise economically disenfranchised and don't have a voice. And you have to be responsive. You have to understand that the system has problems in order to address them.
Thank you. So one of the questions from the committee is, what is or should be the district attorney's efforts to ensure that there is racial and ethnic balance in the jury pools?
So you may or may not know this about me, but well, you may or may not know this about how the jury pools in this community work. So in Onondaga County, there are basically 3 different jury pools. If you're charged in Syracuse City Court with a crime, you get a jury pool of the entire county. If you are charged in county court, you get a jury pool of the entire county. But if you live in Manlius, or if you live in Marcellus, or if you live in Baldwinsville or Skinny Atlas, you get a jury from Skinny Atlas or Baldwinsville or Marcellus. And so what does that mean? So that if you are a person of color who's charged with a crime in the city and you want to see a jury of your peers, you are very unlikely to see that. In a typical city court panel, you might see, one person of color in the entire panel, if that. Because that's just how it works overall in the county. About 15 years ago, I lodged a challenge to that. I said it was unconstitutional. I said, if you are charged with a crime in the city, you deserve a jury of your peers from the city. People who live where you live, look like you look like, experience what you experience every day. Somebody who lives in the outskirts of the county can't understand what goes on in the middle of the city. Any more than somebody who's never left the city can understand what goes on out in the middle of the county. And if you said, hey, everybody gets a countywide panel, sure, I can live with that, but that's not how it is. If you are in Skinny Atlas, you get a Skinny Atlas jury. If you are in the city, you get everybody. You get Skinny Atlas people coming to you too. You don't get to go out there to judge them. They get to come downtown to judge you. That's fundamentally unfair. That has to change. As district attorney, I would put immense pressure on the commissioner of jurors to change that policy. I lodged a lawsuit against it, went all the way up to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals did not rule it to be unconstitutional, but that doesn't make it right. Just because it's constitutional doesn't make it right.
What would you say to the community if they were to say, it's better to go with the devil we know?
Well, I suppose that means that, I guess first thing I'd say is, I'm not the devil. I'm not the devil you don't know. I am, for lack of a word, I like and I hope to think that I have a reputation in the community for the work I've done that stands out. And again, I believe in honesty and integrity. And the fact of the matter is that saying the devil you know means you're satisfied with what we have. If you're satisfied, and I've told this to a lot of people, if you're satisfied with what we have, you think this is the best we got, don't vote for me. Because we're going to make changes. And that has to happen, that can only happen with change. And in this case, change has to happen. We have to do better.
So with that response, why do you think Fitzpatrick has held the office for so long?
At one point, it was probably just because of the sheer power of the office that he wielded, sheer political power of the office that he wielded over the community, such that nobody would challenge him. Those days, thankfully, are mostly past. Right? It's sort of what I saw the good old boy network in the back room. Most of those days are past, and thankfully. New lawyers, kids about town aren't intimidated at all. I'd like to think that I have something to do with that, having trained a lot of them. I've asked lawyers who are from the generation before me, they say, how could you do this to your family by running for office? Do you imagine that? That lawyers I know in this community have been practicing for decades, concerned for not for me, for my family, just that I would offer voters a chance to do better. That time, again, is thankfully past. You can see, and again, you can see just how much my opponents care about the community by the fact that they're not here. They don't care. They're counting on people to stay home. That's how they win. They don't win because people vote. They win because people stay home. We live in a community that Hillary Clinton won handily. We live in a community that Joe Biden won this county, and yet our county government is overwhelmingly red. And why is that? Because, unfortunately, the people who would be most benefited by change in this community seem to stay home. And that is a problem that I haven't found. If anybody has a way to fix it, I work to try to change that every day, but we're out trying to reach people in the communities. Tell them, go vote.
What are the duties of the district attorney?
Basically, the district attorney sets the criminal justice policy for a community. They decide through a variety of efforts. So, for instance, one thing they do is they decide who gets to be a prosecutor. By hiring and firing certain people, you set a tone in the community, right? So if you hire only a certain type of person, that's a reflection of your policy. If you hire different types of people, you set a different policy. You decide where to allocate essentially finite resources. Are we going to say these kinds of crimes are our priority, or these kinds of crimes? Are we going to set up diversion programs for people who need a break? Are we just going to say, hey, let's lock them all up and sort it out later? I mean, that's what the DA does. They set all the policy. And not just that, but when we talk about, the district attorney's office does not control law enforcement, but they do by being the person law enforcement refers to. They are the ones who are in the end responsible for law enforcement. So if law enforcement is failing, if there is a particular officer or an agency that's failing to do what they need to do, it is the responsibility of the district attorney's office to do what they can to make that problem go away. And how do you do that? By doing the right thing, being fair. If there's an allegation against the police officer, you investigate it the same way you investigate against the kid on the corner. Why should anybody be different? Listen, my father wore a badge. He passed away. I carry around his badge with me in my office to remind me of him. He was a good guy. My sister and two brothers are police officers. I have nothing against them. But, my father, he would say to me, nothing's more criminal than a bad cop. And if you're not, if your position is, well, we're not going to look into that, how do you know if it's a problem? So, again, I'm not saying that you should treat police officers unfairly. You should treat them exactly, though, the way you treat everybody else. So if you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt, so for instance, we've had that recent case with a young man who was shot, right? And, incredibly emotional case. I've seen the same things that we've all seen. And there are disturbing parts of all of it, right? We have, on one side, you have an officer responds to the scene by himself, doesn't turn his body camera on, all of which seems to which ends up in a shooting, right? All of it seems avoidable. On the other hand, you have a group of youths who are, by the allegations I've heard, out repeatedly engaging in serious thefts and crimes. So there are two sides to this coin, and what you don't do is prejudge the case. That officer should be judged the same way, again, that any person, you, me, anyone, should be judged. They should not get more of a break, and they also should not get less of a break. Because once we start picking who's more worthy of justice, there's no justice anymore.
So what would your hiring process look like to ensure that the prosecutor's office and the ADAs is not hiring overzealous district attorneys, as you referred to, that depend on stereotypes and historical underpinnings as it relates to the disproportionate rate of incarceration?
So the first thing I do is, again, show up, right? Because if you don't show up and you don't talk to the people you hire, you don't know what they're doing. You can't fix problems. The second thing I would want to do is make sure that my ADAs are out in the community, interacting with folks just like yourselves and all the community groups, and not just in election years, because that doesn't mean anything. You know, you show up for an election year, what does that mean, right? I want people on the ground learning about what is going on in our community. And it's not just in the city, but all throughout our community that should be happening. And I don't see that happening now. The other thing I would want to do is try to find ways to recruit from our own community, from inside the city, more people to get into law school. One of the biggest success stories that I'm aware of is we have a city court judge, Judge Erica Clark, right? I don't want to speak for her. She's a friend of mine. She's been a dear friend of mine. But what a success story, right? She went to Fowler High School, a single mom, right? Disadvantaged, put herself through law school. She's been a prosecutor, she's been a defense attorney, she's been corp counsel, and now she's a judge. And I can tell you, appearing in front of her, she's fantastic. Fantastic. And why is that? Because she has been in this community. She's in Syracuse City Court, but she has lived and been and not just resided, she's lived in this community. So when somebody says something, they talk about this court or that street or this school or that store, she already knows what they're talking about. There's context. Whereas somebody who's never set foot in the city deciding these cases, who says, well, I don't want to go downtown. I'm nervous about that. How do you have context for what you're doing? And those are the kind of people we need to find. And if they don't exist, we need to find ways to bring them into being. We should be in the schools encouraging kids. We say, hey, listen, you graduate from high school, I will write your recommendation for law school. You graduate from law school, you will have a job in my office when you get out. That's how you do it. Can you flip a switch and make it happen tomorrow? No. But again, institutional change takes time. That DA's office is a car, it's been driven off the road, the wheels have fallen off, the engine's on fire. You can't just slap a new coat of paint on it and say it's fixed. There's a lot of work to do. But again, I think that we need to focus on hiring the best and the brightest, but also find the best and the brightest in our community. We don't have a small community. There are plenty of people that we can find. And again, if they're not there now, we need to make them. We need to bring them into existence, encourage them. And that's how we do this.
It's getting hard for me to ask you questions because I like you.
It's okay.
I'm gonna try.
It's okay.
Because
Pretend you're my 9-year-old.
So you talk about showing up. The district attorney's office currently is not showing up. But if you speak to lay people in the community, they would disagree in saying that they believe that the district attorney's office is currently overzealous and they're showing up too much in minimum cases as a result. In 2020, the jail incarceration rate in Onondaga County was 184 per 100,000 people, compared with the statewide average of 101 per 100,000 people. Among New York City and the 57 counties outside of the city, Onondaga County had the 17th highest incarceration rate. That would sound to regular folks like the district attorney's office is showing up, not in such a good way. What is your response to that?
So I can answer that. There's a pretty clear answer to that. One of the biggest reasons for that is because we have new and inexperienced prosecutors almost all the way up the line. There are very few experienced and career prosecutors left in that office. And when you're imagine you're a brand new prosecutor. You barely have your bar card in hand. And you go into city court, they hand, here's 50 files, here you go, do what you're gonna do. How do you decide how to handle those files, right? The easiest thing to do is just say, lock them up, we want to plea. Why? Because when you go up to the 4th floor, no one ever yelled at anybody for getting somebody locked up. Nobody ever saw a news article written up because they lock somebody up. It's always, oh, well, you gave this person a break, they abused it, there you go. So you need to have what I call a hand on the shoulder. You know, you need to have somebody of experience working with the prosecutors to teach them the difference between cases that need to be pushed hard and cases where people have earned or deserve a break. And again, that's just not happening. The easiest thing to do is just say, lock everybody up, because that's easy, right?
I'm listening.
Work is hard, right? And again, nobody's here. You know, my opponent's getting he has a full salary. He's got a full retirement benefit as well at the same time. 4 years since the last election, I think I've seen him in court once. I mean, you're a brand new attorney, right? You're brand new out of law school. You're not going to get rich working in the DA's office. You say, you know what, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to make my community safer. I'm going to try to do the right thing. And they ask you to come in early, stay late, work on weekends, you know, burn yourself out. Give yourself over to this office, body and soul. Oh, and by the way, the guy at the head, he doesn't come in. He's not there. You don't see him. You have to ask, is that Mr. Fitzpatrick? I mean, that's the problem, right? On the other hand, if you're a new ADA and you're being asked to put that time in to care, and your boss shows up, the guy who doesn't have to, but shows up before you do, goes home after you're done, tells you, I've got your back, you've got questions, how to handle these cases, come sit with me, come work with me, we'll talk it out. That's how you solve that problem. Every single case is different, every statistic can be argued different ways, but the only way we fix it, again, is to get better. And we are not going to get better where we are. We are only getting worse.
Although the prosecution's office is responsible to prosecute crime, gun violence is very high. What, if any, program that you could develop, what would it look like to reduce gun violence in Onondaga County?
Well, I've been doing this for about 25 years, and just anecdotally, I have seen what I would call almost an explosion of violence with younger and younger kids, right? The kind of things that I see these days, I just didn't see I mean, you saw them, but not like now, right? And so again, that's an institutional change that we have to put in place. So the first thing, again, you have to recognize that that's going on, that there's been a change. The second thing is you have to look at the causes of it. And there are a lot of them, right? Lack of opportunity, lack of education, lack of economic resources, you know, those things are hard to fix. But what you want to try to do is recognize that children should not be lost causes, right? If you can stop a kid before they get down that road, you can put them on a different path. That's how you beat it. You don't beat gun violence by taking a 16-year-old who has a gun or shot a gun and putting them away for 10 years. Because that doesn't change anything, right? Because the next guy's gonna do the exact same thing. If that worked, we wouldn't have crime in the city, right? If locking everybody up worked, we'd have no crime anymore. So what you need to do is get that person off the path. So first thing you gotta try to do is, again, be in the community, be in the schools all the time. The DA, the first assistant, top people should be in schools talking to kids all the time. And they should be out on the streets. You know, walk out on a corner somewhere, find a bunch of guys hanging on a corner, the typical thing. And so instead of putting them on against a wall and searching them, go talk to them. See what's going on in their lives, right? Don't be afraid. Go talk to them. Find out. They're people. And you may, you know, if there's 5 guys in the corner, you may only reach one. But it doesn't matter. That's still one that you don't have to put in prison. That's one person's son who doesn't get locked up, right? That's one person who doesn't go out and hurt somebody else. And that's invaluable. That's invaluable. But to do that, you have to care. And that's what I want to do. I care. I mean, I genuinely care about doing the right thing for this community. I wouldn't be here. Once you get charged, I mean, you have to have, you know, it's like a train, right? That starts over here and finishes up in prison or the graveyard, right? And you got to get these kids off that train somehow. And now maybe you want to get them before they get on the train, but if they're on the train, you still got to give some opportunities to get off, right? If you don't take advantage of opportunities, well, then at some point, you know, things are what they are. But even if you only get a few, you're still, I mean, if you, just from a human being standpoint, you know, it is so much more effective to stop that at this stage than it is just to lock people up. It doesn't do it. You know, you get some kid who's 20 years old, right? And gets caught with a gun and put him away for 10 years. Well, what if his girlfriend's pregnant? It's got the next generation coming. Well, now that kid doesn't have a dad. The only thing he knows about dad is dad had a gun and went to jail. How does that help, right? It's a downward spiral. That, again, it has to be interrupted. And do I have all the answers to that? No. If I did, you know, we wouldn't have these problems. But you have to recognize these problems before you can fix them. And I just don't see anybody. Certainly, I don't see anybody tonight, but I've never heard anybody talking about these problems and how do we really address them. It's always, you know, let's go lock people up. Let's lock them up. Let's get this person. Let's get that person. You know, even the diversion programs in the DA's office now, they are very much mismanaged and underused. You know, one of the things I said in a prior debate with Bill was talking about a mental health court, right? The lack of mental health services in our community is a crime in itself. I mean, even if you have great insurance, you know, good luck finding mental health care. So how do you find it if you are really seriously ill? Well, you know, in the mental health court, Bill was talking about that, but I said, well, Bill, if you're so concerned about folks, why do they have to plead guilty to get into court to get help? So let's imagine, again, you might be an innocent person, but you might need help. And so you have to sit there and say, well, should I plead guilty to a crime I didn't commit and subject myself to potential incarceration or prison to get the help I need? You shouldn't do that. But that's how that court was run. And it doesn't help people. It sets you up for failure instead of setting you up for success. And you gotta try to do better.
So I want people to prepare to ask a question. So I want you to respond to a scenario.
Sure.
You have two
A little louder in the mic about what you want.
I would like him, while people are preparing to ask questions from the audience, I just want him to respond to a scenario. Two young boys, young men, 14, 15 years of age, who've been living across the street from each other all their lives. One is of black persuasion and one is of non-black, probably possibly Caucasian persuasion.
Sure.
But they're good friends and they grew up and they're doing a project, a homework assignment on mass incarceration. And as they're doing research, they notice the disproportionate rates in which black men are accosted by police, shot by police, imprisoned by the criminal justice system, and jailed 3 times more than their counterparts. And they want to ask you, why is that? They have no knowledge of historical underpinnings, racism. They're just two friends who grew up in the community, and they want to know why there's such a vast difference in their relationship to the criminal justice system, when one has to be more concerned than the other.
Well, certainly there's a racism component to it. I mean, right? We're talking about the difference between a white kid and a black kid. There's certainly racism is involved. There's no question. But you know, when you're talking about systemic problems like that, that didn't happen last week or last month or last year. Not even the last 10 years. Decades ago.
I want you to talk to the 14-year-old.
Oh, 14-year-old. So I would tell the 14-year-old, I would say, hey, listen, guys. You know, the problems you're seeing now are the result of over 100 years of disparate treatment of people of color in this country. And we have made very many positive steps forward, but we are not where we need to be. And that is the single, and thinking we crossed the finish line at some point. You know, you can point to recent Supreme Court decisions where they say, you know, the Voting Rights Act. Oh, we don't have racism anymore. Well, it's very nice of the Supreme Court to say that, but anybody who lives in the real world knows that's not true. So when you think you've crossed the finish line, you stop working. You stop trying to make things better. And that's what happened, is that people stop trying to make things better. And I think that's really how that disparity has come about. And if you stop trying, you're not going to fix it. It's never going to get better. It's never going to get better.
So you know when kids ask a question, they always have a follow-up question.
Sure. I'm
So
waiting.
what can we do? What do we do then? Because if I'm a white kid and I have a very dear friend, I'm concerned about him and his relationship to the criminal justice system. How do I help him and how do he help himself and help me?
Use your voice. Get involved. Don't sit back. That's the biggest thing I can say. You know, so many problems are solvable where we have community participation. But you can't just say there's a problem and then stay home, right? What I tell people is, look, if you don't have time to fix a problem, give some money to help fix the problem. If you don't have money to fix the problem, give your time to fix the problem. But you can't sit back and do nothing. And it doesn't matter whether you're the black kid or the white kid or their parents or anybody else. You can't sit back. Again, I'm in this race because I think we can do better. Our community needs to be safer, but at the same time, we need to recognize the unfairness in the criminal justice system and take forward and positive steps to fix it together. That's how we get it. But you can't sit back and do nothing. That's the real crime, is doing nothing. You go out, you go to community centers, you go to churches, you meet with folks, and the one thing I say to everybody is, look, you don't have to vote for me. Go vote. Go vote. It doesn't matter who you vote for. Go vote. People who run for office unopposed are not answerable to anyone for anything at all. But if you live in a community and you're worried about whether or not you're going to keep your job, you are responsive not to someone else, not to yourself, but to the community. And that's how we make change. Make the people in charge, make our leaders accountable to all of us. And so vote, run for office, get involved, join an organization, whatever it is. I don't care what your particular feeling is about one issue or another, but be involved, give your time. That's how it's, because otherwise we can't fix anything. We really can't.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Anyone?
So, thank you for the great answers to these questions. And I know it's a heavy lift. As someone who worked with District Attorney Johnson in the Bronx, we instituted although law enforcement, we were trying to bridge a gap with the community and the recidivism that seemed to keep happening in the youth. So we instituted the DA's, almost a DA basketball team, just Saturdays. They volunteered some time. The DA's office had this, I guess, money they confiscated, we'll call it, and snacks and all of those things were had, and then of course trophies handed out at the end, almost like an actual basketball team. Not that every kid is into that, but they were into just cheering on their teams, and it was a controlled atmosphere, really, if you're honest, and the officers were referees. So it kind of bridged that whole getting together thing, and we used the space one of the schools gave us. So they seem to be good, at least a moment of time that we can stop being them versus us and do something better. I'm wondering if, in fact, the DA's office, if they don't have a program like that, which I haven't heard of, would you be willing to, because you got to pull them in somehow, incentivize and pull some of the younger DAs specifically, but the older ones for refs, whatever, to do that? Because I was sitting here thinking about how do we undo it's so much harm, it's so much mistrust. So how do you win elected? How do you bridge the gap, if anything?
So, like I said, one of the things I mentioned, one of the other answers was just, go out and talk to people on the corner, see what's going on. If you have a face-to-face relationship with somebody, you have credibility. If you can walk up to somebody and you know their name, you know their brother's name, you know their mom's name, you have some credibility because it shows that you actually care about them as a person, right? So that's something that has to be looked at. But I'm all for as much interaction between the community and the law enforcement, which polices it, as possible. Because again, if you don't know and one of the issues that's come up with years is should all the police reside in the city, right? And that's an issue. And if you don't live in the city, and the only time you come into the city is to put a badge and a gun on, you have a certain image of the city that it can, listen, I know people who are Syracuse cops who don't come in, they don't come into the city any other time other than when they got a badge and a gun on. And that shouldn't be the case. You should know the people you police. You should know, again, use Judge Clark's example, you should know the people, the places, the things, how things work. And not just as a way to find people to arrest. You should know it as a way to benefit the community. So I would encourage that. I think that I would have some credibility with law enforcement to say that because, one, as a trial attorney, my job is to convince people of things. So that's what I do. The second thing is, my whole family is cops, right? I can speak, they speak a different language than you or I do. They just do. And, whether they're black or white, they're all blue. That's that, you have to speak their language. And I've grown up around folks speaking that language. So just like I would be able to speak to somebody, a couple of kids, is hanging on a corner or going to a store at a school, I have the same credibility. I can walk in, speak to a bunch of police officers, and speak to them as well with that kind of credibility. And that gives you a bridge to sort of take those two things, which you typically think is far apart, and bring them together. I mean, that's how you got to do it. I mean, there really are. There's only so many things you can. I mean, there are no miracles in life, right? And you're going to have failures, but you don't focus on the failures. You focus on your successes, and you try to find ways to make more success. Because, like I said, you may talk to 5 kids, and 4 of them makes no difference at all. They end up the same way they would end up anyway. But if you get 1 kid, I mean, what a victory, right? I mean, a life, an entire beneficial, productive life, somebody saved. And it's not just that kid, right? Because that kid's gonna have kids, and now those kids are off the pit. Because otherwise, again, we've seen so many times, right? I'm old enough now that the tragedy of my practice is that I'm starting to recognize the names of kids from having represented their dads. And I hate saying to somebody, hey, I knew your dad. And they ask how, and I go, well, there you go. That's terrible, right? And again, so if you can break that chain, you're not just saving one life, you're saving many lives, generations. And it took generations to get where we are. It'll take generations to get better, but you gotta start somewhere. Journey of 1,000 miles starts a single step, right?
So Miss Jackie has the mic. Anyone has questions?
Tough. Give me some tough ones.
My questions weren't tough.
No, I mean.
Yes.
So now I'm caught off guard, right?
Hello. Thank you for being here.
Sure.
I don't know how tough this is. We'll see.
That's okay.
So, I wanted to ask if you foresee significant pushback from the powers that be surrounding the position of DA regarding, overhauling the culture within the office, and if so, how do you foresee that you will ensure that significant change can occur? And as an addendum to that question, can you describe a time or experience in which you were up against cultural pushback and proceeded regardless?
Okay, so I'll answer the last one first. Yeah, that's easy. I already mentioned it. When I challenged the jury pools, right? Because that had been in place forever. And that was an injustice. And I was working at the Legal Aid Society, and I could have just done come in, did a few cases, gone home, came in, did a few, but I saw something that I thought was a real injustice, and I said, we're going to do it. We're going to change it. And when I went to the law school, like I said, I'm teaching the law school. I'm living high on the hog now. I don't have to do that kind of thing. But no, I took that case, I kept it alive. And we went all the way up to the Court of Appeals, and we got pushed back and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. You should see, should have heard the phone call I got from the Office of Court Administration when I foiled every commissioner of jurors in New York State to see how many of them did the same thing that Onondaga County did, right? Many of them, yes. Many of them, no. So that's an example of getting some cultural pushback. And if you're talking about, the office itself, so if you can remind me, what was the first part? Because I remember it was about
just if you foresee.
pushback, right?
Yeah.
So my answer to that is, I talk to ADAs every day, right? I see their faces. I see, you know, and when they leave the office, they feel much more free to talk. But I still talk to people in the office. I can't portray confidence who they are, obviously, but they're drowning. They're drowning. All they want is help, and it's not given to them. They're not. Look, every walk of life, every profession, there's good people, bad people in the middle. But most of those folks I know, almost to a ton, are trying, good people trying to do the right thing, who are not getting the support they need to do. And they need that. I've said before, I'll say it again, if Bill wants to hold the election among his own staff, I'll take that election. Let his own staff decide that. I'll take that election, because I'm pretty sure how it would come out. You know, I'm pretty sure how it would come out. And, you know, I mix it up with the members of the district attorney's office regularly. I'm no softie, I'm no pushover. I mix it up with the judiciary. But they all know me and respect me. Because there's a way to mix it up, right? There's a way to be strong, and there's a way to be professional. My opponent's way is not. You know, one of the things, it hasn't come up yet, but he made a fake website for him. Keller, if you go to kellerforda.com, you can see it, right? So it's got a photo. The old picture was one of me when I had cancer and I was really ill. But I complained about that. I guess it got back to him, so we changed it, just other Photoshop pictures. But think about this, right? What is the cardinal sin of a prosecutor? Manufacturing evidence, right? So what is creating a fake website in my name to put policy positions that I've never discussed and claimed among two of them, by the way? One of them was, I know at least two of them were. One of them was talking about CRT in schools, which I don't know what the DA's office has to do with that, right? But that's up there. Go, you can see it. Talks about how I push CRT in schools. Whether I would or wouldn't, what does that have to do with the DA's race, right? Second thing, he says, I want to take away everybody in New York's guns. My father was a cop. I grew up around guns. I don't think you should take away everybody's guns. I think you should have logical gun laws, right, to keep us all safe. But we have a Second Amendment. I believe in the right to bear arms and have a gun. I know how to. I don't have one now, but you know, my father passed away. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to keep one of his guns as a memento. So, you know, you say to yourself, what the heck, right? I mean, that's what's going on in that office, right? And if you're willing to do that in public, what are you willing to do when the lights are on and the door's closed? What kind of strings are you pulling, right? What kind of fingers are you putting on scales in private? And, you know, it's a failing of our media. Our media is all our news media is well aware of it. But if they ever ask them a single question about it, no. Has anybody in the who deals with attorneys' ethics called them on it? Of course not. But that's how it is, right? But again, we don't get anywhere unless we try, and I'm here trying. So that's what we do. I hope that answered at least some parts of the question.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think we have another question.
Sure.
Hello. Knowing that Fitzpatrick and Varga chose not to show up tonight, I want to know, as a representative, because you sound like you're very much for the community, how did that make you feel?
Well, I mean, I'll give you my candid answer. This, for better or worse, is one thing that Bill and I do have in common, is that we don't have any problem being outspoken about what we really think. What I think is it's chicken shit, okay? Because I don't care if there's one person here, or 1,000 people here, or 10,000 people here. You know, this was an opportunity for the candidates to discuss issues in front of people who care. And let's put it this way: I bet if I took a poll, 100% of the people here are voting. So we have voters here who care about the issues and want to be able to speak to candidates. And I don't care if there's one of you or 1,000. You should be responsive to people. And it's cowardice not to come here. It's also arrogance, because they think you don't care. They don't think you don't matter. Oh, your votes don't matter. You aren't going to go out. See, that's the thing. They don't think any of you are going to get in the community and bring people to the polls. They think you're going to stay home. They think you'll say, it's raining on November, Tuesday. I'll stay home. They think you don't care. So what I encourage people to do is care. When you go vote, nobody should vote alone. Bring friends. Bring friends all the time. And so it's literally an insult It's arrogant, and it's, and it's cowardice.
Thank you. I have one more question.
Sure.
Knowing that police and the prosecution have discretion that allow for racial and ethnic discrimination in the justice system, I want to know, how are you going to check this if you become DA?
Well, first of all, you got to look at it and see where it happens, right? So, I'll give you an example. This is not a made up. This is a real life example. So, I have a fellow, who remain unnamed. I met him in 1999. I worked at Legal Aid Society. He got charged with a misdemeanor, and his case was actually the one that I did the jury challenge in. But I've known him since 1999. He is a good person at heart, but he, because of his circumstances and his situation, how he grew up, and other factors, he has been unable to sort of get out of his own way, and keeps getting involved in the criminal justice system. So and I consider him a good friend. And on the one level, people would say, well, this guy keeps getting arrested, we should lock him up forever. But when you sit down and you talk to him, you get to know him, he's a fundamentally decent person. Works hard. The guy has like 4 jobs at any given time, right? But he has an incredible distrust of authority. The police, law enforcement, the DA's office, judges, and rightfully so. Just a few months ago, he was walking down the street, his headphones on, his jacket on, and he is a small-framed, dark-skinned, short-haired guy. Police stopped him as the suspect in a robbery that was committed by a large-framed, tall, light-skinned Hispanic or white male, wearing no shirt and shorts. And they beat the snot out of him. His face is bloody. And you know why they did that? Because he said, I didn't do anything, I don't want to talk to you. And somebody wrote in a report, it said, I looked at the picture from the video, and he matched the description. Well, I looked at the picture, let's put it this way, you and I look more alike than the photograph and my friend. And, I went to court, the judge was outraged. I came prepared. I had a screenshot, I had a report, the judge was like, I can't believe it. So I want to educate the judiciary to say, hey, look, this is what goes on in our community. You better know it so you can check it. Because too often judges just simply rely on what one side says and never listens to the other. And the second thing is I made sure that case got outright dismissed immediately. No stay out of trouble for 6 months, no write a letter of apology, no way, get rid of it. And my question to the prosecutor was, who are you going to talk to about this pretty clear instance of assault and potential perjury in your office? And they said, I don't know. And you know what's happened with it? Exactly zero. Exactly zero. So those, again, does that officer tar every officer? Should we paint them all with that person? No, of course not. But you have to be realistic. When you can't take somebody who does that and say, hey, you could be a police officer. You just can't. You can't. My father would never have stood for me. My brothers never stood for me. Never. Ever. It's just outrageous. And that's, again, there is no magic formula to fix, social injustice, racism. These things have been coming to a head for hundreds of years, right? And so we're not going to fix it tomorrow. But we got to do the best we can. And I don't think we're doing the best we can. I think we can do better.
I have a question.
Sure.
And I'm going to ask this question as a voter, as a stakeholder in the community, who just so happens to be a member of the coalition that gave this forum. And this is a statement and a question. The current District Attorney Fitzpatrick indicated to members of this coalition that he wasn't coming because I was involved, and that you was representing my son in a gun case, and that I was arrested in Rochester for disclosure because there is no, I speak truth to power. I was arrested in Rochester. Everybody know about the situation. I had my gun license to carry my firearm for several years, had my file and mistakenly brought it with me. He said he didn't come because of that. What's your opinion about that?
I think that's a lot like what Bill says. It's
Chicken shit.
a little bit of half-truth, a little bit of half-truth to cover up a whole bunch of bullshit. Right? Yeah. Is it true you're a member of the coalition? Yeah. Is it true that I represent your son? Yeah. Is it true you got arrested? Sure. All those things are true. But what the heck does that have to do with showing up being responsible to everybody else here? What are you going to do? You're going to run rap sheets on the whole community and say, I'm not speaking to anybody until I check out their criminal history? That's ridiculous. It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense to me. If anything, you speak to everybody. I mean, you can't just say, hey, you made a mistake in life, or hey, you did something wrong. And maybe it was a mistake. Maybe you really did commit a serious crime. But everybody's voice has to be heard, because you can't know what you're doing unless you listen to all voices. Really, you can't. And him not coming out here again, it's, is he afraid? Well, I don't know. He's not, I don't think he's afraid. I know he doesn't like debating me, because I say a couple things. I say, hey, we get along all right. I shake his hand and I say, hey, Billy, what's Chuck? That kind of thing. So, fine. But I call him on his bullshit. I don't know anybody else who does, really, right? And anybody else who does, he gets into personal insults, right? Calls him stupid, calls him an idiot, but never said that to me. You know why? Because he can't. Because when I call him on something, I'm speaking the truth.
Okay.
And for him to make it personal with you, just going to show you how much he cares about the community. It's an excuse.
And my second statement is that with my situation in Rochester 9 months ago, I was informed of something that you just said. If he does that openly, what does he do behind closed doors? Well, I know he put his finger on the scale concerning me in Monroe County. What's your opinion on that? Is that something that you would do if you become DA?
I have no idea what he did or didn't do, but I can tell you this. Under no circumstance, ever, would I even consider such a thing. First of all, to reach out to another community and say, hey, this is how I'm not your elected DA. I might drive through it on the way to, Buffalo Bills game, but you should listen to me to how to run your criminal justice system. Outrageous. Would never happen. And if something like that occurred in this community, and I didn't think that based upon some kind of personal relationship one way or the other, that I could be fair to hold myself to that high standard, I'd step back and have a special prosecutor put in. Because that's what they're for. That's why they exist. Because not everybody can be perfect with everybody else. Again, I've said it before, it sounds like a broken record, right? If you don't know what's wrong, you can't fix it. If you don't recognize your failings, you can't achieve, you can't excel. It's just putting your head in the sand doesn't help it. So, hearing what I've heard from you, Alfonso, is just incredibly disturbing. It's so disturbing, I don't even know what reaction I could have other than shock.
Don't be. So I have a question. The good old boy system you mentioned. Removing Fitzpatrick will not necessarily put a dent in the good old boy system. He's been in the office.
I'll disagree with you on that. I put a big old dent.
All right, tell me how.
Why? Well, because the DA's office historically has been a feeder system for political office up and down this community, whether it's the legislature, the county executive, the judiciary, everything, right? And so a change of culture changes the culture of people who go into the office. That's number one, right? Number two is, I love playing golf, right? It's one of my favorite sports. I don't play as much. I got 2 little daughters. Don't play as much as I used to. But I like playing golf. But you don't do that on county time. You don't do that. You can't be best friends with the people you are charged with overseeing, right? If you're the person who watches, you can't be best friends with that person. You can't say, hey, I'm going to look out for corruption with this guy I play golf with 3 times a week, or who I went to his daughter's wedding. doesn't work like that. So you have to take a step back. For me, one of the things I've tried to focus on is, I've told people I want your support, and I want your support because you believe in what we can do, not what I can do for you. Because that is not how I am. And maybe my own failing, maybe it holds me back to some degree, but I just am not morally capable of saying to somebody, hey, you slide me something here, I'll slide you something there. I just can't do that. I'd rather not. I can't do it. I couldn't do it.
So with your election, there'll be a drastic shift?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. And with whether it's local government, county government, whether it whatever agency or people, whatever it is, everybody's on this. Again, everybody has to be the same. If you're breaking the law, that has to be investigated. If you're found to have actually done it, you have to be punished appropriately. That's how it works. And again, whether you're some kid over here or whether you're the highest member of government over there, because if you're going to pick how justice works, justice goes away.
So, hypothetically speaking,
Sure.
you're the district attorney when the two young men were shot by the sheriff. What is your prosecutorial or judicial immediate response, specifically after the tape was shown?
My personal response, or as my
Your professional
response?
as a district attorney.
My first
Because
response.
Fitzpatrick never said anything.
Well, not to his credit, but he really can't, right? Because whatever he says tends to, for lack of a better word, taint things, right? So I would hesitate to get too much into it, but what I would say is that regardless of what side of that issue you are on, and again, if you go on Facebook or Syracuse.com, you can see there are definitely sides on this issue, and very few people, what I would say, but to the people on the sides, what I would say is, look, let a full, complete, and total investigation play out, and let's see where it goes. But in return for your trust in that, trust has to be rewarded by an actual, real, thorough, transparent investigation into what happened. Because it can't be one, or you can't say, hey, trust us, we're going to do an investigation. At the end they say, well, the sheriff was in the right, and we're not going to say anymore, that's it, go home. Can't do that. On the other hand, they can't say, it would be just as inappropriate to say, hey, that sheriff, he was completely wrong, we're going to charge him with murder and not disclose why. Again, if you want to get the community's trust, you have to be responsive to the community, right? And the way, they say the streets talk, right? But the streets don't always tell the truth. And the way you combat that is with transparency. And in a case like that, and I hesitate to really talk about a case that's actually going on because that's so charged, but in a case like that, the way forward is openness and transparency. Again, we may not always agree. You and I may see, you may like apples, I like oranges. I don't know, right? It doesn't matter. But the point is that we can have a discussion, and we should have that. And you should trust that when you ask me a question, I'm going to give you a genuine and honest answer as best I can. And in return, I should be able to rely on you to withhold judgment until I give you what I can give you, so you can make your judgment. You get what I'm saying?
So what you're saying to me as a black mother in a hypothetical situation where my son or child was in a situation like we're referring, that I can trust you I can trust you as the district attorney to be transparent and not play politics over the grave of my son.
You can trust me, because to me, honor and integrity are more important than being the DA.
I'm only saying that, and I don't mean to cut you off, because there's a lot of woes with mothers with the loss of our children.
Absolutely.
While we watch officers play politics, yet we're continuously mourning our young children. And there's always this response to be transparent, but the result doesn't always equal justice. Tell me, what is your take on that?
I mean, again, that's a tough one, right? Because every situation can be different, right? And not every situation has a clear yes or no, right or wrong answer. You can both be right in a tragedy, and you can both be wrong in a tragedy, and everywhere in between. But the answer is, as a mother involved in that situation, you need to be involved. And what I don't mean you need to come forward, I mean they need to come forward to you and involve you in every step of the process, so you don't know. Because look, in the end, is anybody satisfied in a circumstance like that? I don't know if you can. But you know what? You shouldn't have to go and look for answers. The answers should be brought to you. That's the best I can promise. I mean, again, I can't take a certain situation and say what happened, that circumstance with the sheriff. I don't have enough. I don't know if any of us were there, saw it. I don't have enough information to say one thing or another about it, but I can tell you that one thing that should happen is absolute and complete transparency. Withholding information breeds mistrust. Period. And that is something, and again, the mistrust is not misplaced, right? Because things have, sort of in these recent few years, things have gotten better in those terms, but better compared to decades and decades of absolute wall of silence, right? So is it better than, say, 20 or 30 years ago in terms of the responsiveness to law enforcement in these kinds of situations? Yeah, it is. But again, we didn't finish. There's no finish line we got to cross. We can always do better. And we can always improve. And every situation has to be taken on its merits, and we do the best we can. And my promise to the community is that I will always try to do the best I can. That's the best I can do. It's all I can do. And if you don't take me in my word, if you don't believe me, then you're saying you believe people who aren't here. Empty chairs.
We have a question.
This is a question from online. The young lady is saying that she would like to know your perspective on youth crimes in the city of Syracuse. What is your perspective on it, and what, if anything, can be done? Would you do in the office?
Well, youth crime is absolutely a problem, right? Because, like I said before, we're seeing more and more violent crimes committed by younger and younger kids, right? And that's a thing that's evolved or devolved over decades, right? So you're not gonna fix it in a day. But again, you need to stop that before it happens. Because once you get on that train to violence and prison, it's hard to get off, right? But on the flip side of that, if you recognize that we all live among human beings, some of us are better, some of us are worse, some of us are good people, some of us not as good, but we're all human beings. And the fact of the matter is that if all you have known in your life is hopelessness, right? And you don't have, you see people with things you can never have. They go places you can never go. They have opportunities that you never receive. What do you have to lose when somebody says to you, hey, if you commit this crime, we're going to lock you up? You say, who cares? I don't have anything. You can't take anything from me if I don't have it, right? And so what we need to do is let those kids know that they can have opportunities. And if they're not there now, we need to make those opportunities available, because when you have something that's important to you, you will protect it. You will. I tell people, new attorneys, I tell them the single biggest difference between the people who sit on my side of the desk and the people who come into my office sit on that side, you know what it is? Education. School. When I started the business, Legal Aid Society, one of the background questions they asked everybody, what's the highest grade school you finished? And in a year, the number of people who tell me they finished high school, I can count on one hand. In a year. And the people who went to college, I don't know, 1, 0. And to me, that, because I see people from all walks of life. I see white people, I see black people, I see Hispanic people, I see women, men, all kinds of things. But the single biggest factor of the difference between the people who sit on my side of the desk and that side is education. And that's where we need to put our focus. And if those education opportunities aren't there and they're not encouraged and we don't recognize that, we fail. My answer is I believe a classroom is always cheaper than a jail cell. Right? You say, oh, we don't have enough of this, we don't have that. Did anybody ever say we don't have enough money for a jail cell? You ever hear any politician ever say, we're running out of money, we gotta close some jails, don't have enough, so we can't open up anymore? No, it's never happened. But they'll tell a school, hey, we gotta cancel that program, we don't have the money. Hey, we can't hire an extra teacher or guidance counselor, we don't have the money. Hey, that program we had to interdict kids from getting a gang, prevent them from getting gang violence, oh, we don't have any money. But boy, you know what? When they get in the gangs and they fire the guns and they sell the drugs and they get arrested, there's plenty of money for the jail cell. And that we gotta change. We gotta change.
So, Chuck,
So, we have another question, Karen.
Yeah, he has a microphone.
Hi Chuck, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing good. Those that don't know me, which I think most of you do, I'm Dr. Dexter, Pastor Dexter. So I got 4 questions for you.
Okay, 4.
You should be able to navigate them really swiftly or expeditiously. So you and myself, about this time 3 or 4 years ago, you were at the Southwest Community Center along with a few other conservatives and Republican Party, and I asked Mr. Fitzpatrick a question, and that was as far as if someone was convicted of a crime falsely and they had evidence to show that the district attorney's office you helped me out.
They withheld evidence.
Well, exculpatory evidence?
Sure, yeah, they withheld exculpatory evidence.
Okay. And they remastered some things, and so Mr. Fitzpatrick said
Smoothed some things over.
Right. So Mr. Fitzpatrick said that there was an integrity department, which shocked all of us, within his office. Have you found that office yet? Because I haven't.
I've heard that. I heard him say that.
Well, I have it on recording, so
it
we'll
was
go
a
back and look
surprise.
at
No,
it.
there's no question he said it. It's a surprise to me. Does it exist? Does he have somebody in their office who has a piece of paper that says they are the prosecutorial integrity ADA? I don't know. Maybe. But are they looking at cases in any meaningful way? I have no idea. But you know,
It's safe to say that they're not, right?
I mean, here's the thing. Here's a good example, right? So, again, I hesitate to use actions, but if they're, you know, he put himself out in the paper. Anthony Broadmoor. Familiar with Anthony Broadmoor? So, he was charged with rape and maxed out, did all the prison time, and then only just recently did they find evidence to exonerate him, right? My opponent Bill has taken a lot of credit for that, but really, it was, you know, Mr. Broadmoor's attorneys who did that work. Bill Fitzpatrick didn't reach out to everybody and say, hey, I think we got a guy who's wrongfully convicted. Let's do something about it. You know, when presented with overwhelming evidence that the guy was innocent, he did the right thing. Should he get a cookie for doing the right thing? I mean, I don't think so, right? You have to be aware of that. And again, culturally, if your job is to win, that creates the atmosphere where you just sort of take a piece of paper and just, oh, we lost that piece of paper. All that witness affidavit, kind of disappears, right? And if that's your goal, but if your goal is to do the right thing, and sometimes the right thing, by the way, is to let a case go, because sometimes that is the right thing to do. That's what you do. And if you're so concerned about your office and your position that you can't do the right thing, you shouldn't have the job.
So there should be accountability.
Absolutely. And if I found that any prosecutor, I mean, again, if it's one thing if some piece of paper was not presented to a prosecutor or something, I'm talking about the classic situation you think about where, you know, there's a witness statement and they just go whoop, right in the circular file, right? If I found out that happened, I would prosecute them. because I can't imagine. It's 2 crimes, right? Because you get charged, right, with that. They hide that piece of paper, so you as an innocent person go to prison. That's a crime. But the guilty person walks the streets with impunity. 2 crimes. It's 2 crimes they're committing. People forget that. People who say like, oh, well, we shouldn't take a look at these cases. Well, if you get the wrong person, that's 2 tragedies, not just 1. Because again, if you're the victim of a crime, you don't want that person walking the street as much as anybody.
So I don't want to have you go on, and I know I'm coming in late.
Oh,
You
sure,
kind of
go ahead.
sort of answered the second question with the integrity part of it. How would you bring integrity into a troubled situation in a DA's office that's dysfunctional and that's hiring people that have attacked people on the street? When I say people, there's one particular officer that attacks someone down the street from my church on South Ave. He is an investigator for the DA. We have a judge that's working part-time in the DA's office. He's hired all these people that have done severe harm to the community to investigate when they didn't want to be investigated when they had done something wrong. And I'm not speaking about what somebody else shared with me. I went to the DA's office, I'm looking at the individual, I'm seeing the individual, and I'm like, what in the Gehenna are they, how are they here when they've harmed? How would you bring that integrity back into the mainstream?
Accountability, right? This is what it is, accountability. Now, again, you treat everybody the same, right? So that means you come to me, you say, hey, one of your investigators is doing...
Let me define it real quick.
Sure.
When I say bring integrity, so if you have these people that are actually prosecutors, will you do like they did in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, where the DA goes in and he fires all these people that had actually done erroneous things? That was my question.
So,
that.
I've dealt with almost every single prosecutor in the office, and I can tell you that with very few exceptions, the vast majority are simply struggling to get by. So what happens is when you lack the training and the support you need and you're struggling to get by, you make the kind of mistakes, you err on the side of making the mistake that leads to the injustice you're talking about. And it's like systemic racism, right? You don't have to say, I'm racist for the system to have a racist result, right? And that's what can happen, right? So if you're a prosecutor who doesn't know their job, doesn't understand how to do their job, what happens is you get a result. Because I have a lot of people who say, why is this prosecutor picking on me? Why are they coming? And I say, it's not you, you're a file. They don't care about you personally. It's just that they don't know any better.
So for the sake of time, we're going to have a few minutes left.
Sure.
So you've answered that before I got here, but you answered it for me to a degree now. The last 2 questions are going to be compound. Tomorrow there is a lawsuit that is going to be filed in federal court against the DA and his staff personally for packing a file against me to send me to prison. And I'm quite sure everybody here is kind of familiar with the movie Medea Goes to Jail. I'm definitely not Medea or Tyler Perry, although I think I look better than Tyler Perry. But where the DA packed, which we call it, a lot of people don't know I have a legal background, and I'm a forensic psychologist by degree. So when you're packing that, you're actually forcing someone to go to prison when you know that there's erroneous information. How would you handle a situation to where a DA that's going out is being questioned with their particular integrity? Would you look into that aspect of the nature of how they handle, and would you prosecute someone that, if it came across your table, a DA or whoever that has done something wrong? Then lastly, as the only Republican that's in this room, well, I'm quite sure, as the only Republican in this room, I have respect for Mr. Fitzpatrick, and when you have a venue like this, people need to be present because we begin to believe that we don't count. And so how would you have get me, if I can say in layman's terms, to vote for you, not because of a lawsuit, but how would you get a Republican to turn your direction? I'm more of an independent than anything else, but I'm a registered Republican. How do you gain my vote?
So I'll respond in a couple of ways. First off, regarding allegations of misconduct in the office. Any allegations of misconduct by any staff who work for me would be looked into, period, end of story, right? Because it happens. There have been ADAs who have been fired over the years, even under Fitzpatrick, right, for wrongdoing. I don't see any reason why I wouldn't continue to look into anything. But again, you can't, it has to be a fair and full investigation, just as any of us would want if we were accused of anything, right? So, and to respond to your question about why I should have someone who's not, say, a Democrat vote for me, I said, my answer is sort of the same as I started, which is, if you think that we're doing the best that we can do, and this community's getting the best it can get, then don't vote for me. Because I'm gonna change things. I'm going to make it better. You know, the hold up, the knock on sort of Democrats is that they want, you know, the knock is, oh, we want we want criminals to run the streets, and we want, you know, nobody should go to jail, and, you know, it doesn't matter how many times you assault somebody, you get a, you know. I've never met anybody, I've never met any defense attorneys, no matter how left of left they are, who believes that, ever, right? And so that's not true. What we all should believe in, and I'll tell you this one, as you may know, I had the conservative line for some period of time, right? I didn't get it from some hustle, right? I went and met with these folks, and these are the reddest of red folks, and they asked me questions. I stood before them for an hour, and they asked questions. They talked about bail reform, discovery reform, juvenile justice, sentencing, racism, all the questions. They asked a lot of the same questions. A lot of the same questions that you're all asking. It's a little different perspective, but the same thing. And I gave them my truthful, honest answers. And those folks who heard my truthful, honest answers picked me 2-1. Right? Not because I made some outlandish promise to them, but I told them that I would be true to them, and I would be true to my word about what my answers are. And so what I would say to you is, we've had a lot of interaction here, we've had a lot of discussion, you've heard a lot from me. I would say that this is who I am. I don't have a script. I'm not here to try to, you know, blow smoke at somebody and try to influence them to run a hustle. I'm not doing that. I am who I am. And if you're here tonight and you like what I'm saying, that's why you should vote for me. Period. That's what it should be. And again, we can disagree. And if you do, I invite you to come up and talk to me, because you know what? I don't know everything. And what I know, I learn from other people.
Thank you,
I have
Mr. Keller.
a statement and not a question. And I'm just confused because I heard Dr. Hudson say it, and I heard you say it. There's an office of integrity within the DA's office?
This is what Chuck and I were, we were definitely shocked. Chuck was like, oh, really? You have to see the video. I have the video. And he said, yes, it's in my office, and if someone actually has the information, not bogus information, but they actually have the evidence to overturn a case, we will do just that. And then Chuck was like, I would like to know where this office is. The DA wanted to make it be about me, but I wanted to keep general the conversation when I was asking. All right, so yeah, that's what it said. But there is an office within the AG's office that does the investigation. If the district attorney or the police department does not do their job, they have a specific area where they do the investigation. And so that's what was referred to me after the fact, that you could go there by the DA's office. But I said, no, Billy, you said X, Y.
Not Billy. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
there's one last question because
Okay,
we're so apprecitive of your
By the way,
time.
what I was doing is not trying to say, I was just trying to get on the DA's website to see if there's such a thing. Because I've never seen it. So if it exists, I guess it's kind of like, I guess maybe Bigfoot exists, right? You know? Maybe somebody's seen it somewhere, maybe there's a photograph of it, but no one's ever actually, like, you know, captured one live. But what do you got?
So this is one question that came online. It says, can you ask if he is going to go after landlords, slumlords within the community,
Well-
particularly for lead poisoning.
So that is generally outside of the purview of the district attorney's office, because in order to deal with that, you would have to have committed a crime. The crime is defined by this penal law in New York, and there isn't a crime of lead in a house, right? And again, something doesn't have to be a crime to be wrong, right? You know, cheating on your wife, lying, those aren't crimes, but they're wrong. Having lead and the tragedy of the lead poisoning in our community is terrible. Now, again, if there were a case, and admittedly I'm hard pressed to think of it, if there were a case that did violate the penal law of the state of New York, you can be sure I would certainly look into it. Because we have to do something, right? We have to do something. I don't want to speak for Bill Kinney, but I know that Bill's talking about, at American, there's the county legislature talking about this lack of funding to deal with lead in the city. I think with this aquarium, right? I like fish, I like aquariums, right? I do, but I think we should deal with children who are harmed by toxic substances in their homes before we worry about, they get to go down a few blocks to go see some fish. And it's not that we can't do two things at once. Perhaps we can do multiple things at once. But when you say, hey, again, it's like the schools in prison, right? Oh, we don't have enough for your classroom. We don't have enough for your teacher. We don't have enough for your coach or your counselor or music or art or supplies or school lunches. We don't have enough for that. But the results of those failures end up, you're looking at a jail cell. We got plenty of money for that.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. I want you to give your closing statement, but a question just arose in my mind, and I think it's important to ask. There's been an increased rate in prosecuting the homeless and the mentally ill, while this city is building luxury apartment buildings. How do you address that as a district attorney if you were to be voted in, as far as holding people in jail for 730 exams when there's nowhere else for them to go, or holding the homeless or fining the homeless hundreds of dollars, which we know they have the inability to pay?
So the first thing I would say is that I am genuinely, we don't have debtor's prison in this country, right? So I am absolutely disinclined to take somebody's financial situation as a reason to handle a case a certain way, right? So if you have the ability to pay a fine, but someone doesn't, you shouldn't be able to just pay your $50 and get out of it, where someone who doesn't has to spend a night in jail, right? You have to recognize that problem before you can fix it. There are other things that we can do. Can the DA's office, fix problems associated with gentrification? No, we can't. No. But we do again have to address homelessness and mental health. And again, the way to deal with it is before it gets to me, right? Because when it gets to me, remember that train I'm talking about? You're not just on the train. You've left the station and you're pulling it over here. And as much as I'd like to be able to fix the world, the DA's office can't fix that problem in a meaningful way. Can't fix homelessness as the district attorney. Can't fix the lack of mental health care in the community. What you can do is offer opportunities. It's the carrot, right? You can offer carrots to people to get off this train. And again, are you going to reach everybody? No. Are you going to even reach the majority of people? Maybe not. But everybody you do is a life saved. And again, whatever time and effort and expense it's here, it's still cheaper than the jail cell. I tell people, sometimes people say, why should, we pay for school and education in jail, right? Why should somebody get extra programming that my kid who didn't go to jail doesn't get? And my answer is, well, I understand that point. It does seem unfair, but would you rather not spend the money and this person breaks in and takes your teeth? Because how expensive is that to you, right? And then after you say, boy, I wish I had that program then, right? And so I think what it is we're all we all sometimes get emotional and short-sighted in how we deal with problems. Sometimes you have to take a longer view and slow down. And again, all I can promise is to do the best I can to take that time, to slow down, to listen to voices, to hear what people have to say, and do the best I can under the circumstances.
Thank you so much. We want to give Mr. Keller a round of applause. Thank you so much for having the integrity, which is the word of the day, integrity, to at least show up. Thank you so much.
I have to say, I am a little disappointed because, I'm a trial attorney. I do like mixing it up. And so, as nice as it is to interact with everybody, and I do enjoy that, I am really kind of sad that I didn't get to mix it up a little bit.
That's okay. We appreciate
I've got a little bit of the fight in me a little bit, so.
If you would like to have any last words.
And please give they're asking for your website on here.
Sure. So, if you go to kellerforda.com, that's the fake one.
Yes.
If you go there, but what you can do is the best place to find me is on Facebook, and you can find Keller for District Attorney, or Chuck Keller for District Attorney. You find us on Facebook. What I ask people to do is, if you like the message I'm saying, share, like, over and over and over, right? It's not 50 years ago, right? If you send out a mailer, what do people do with the mailer? Into the garbage goes, right? Doesn't even get, not even a drink coaster. If you robocall people, you lost that vote, right? TV ads, does anybody how's that get you off Netflix, right? Everybody's watching Netflix and all that, so you can't get that. So how do you reach people today, right? You do things like this, number one. And number two, you say, get out and share on social media. If you have a social media presence, get out, share it every day. That's the way to do it. You can go on Facebook, you can boost all the posts you want, but you know what? I can't boost to your friends or your friends or your friends or yours. Only you can do that. And that's what I tell them. I say, that's how you do it. And if you have to, reach out to us on Facebook and we'll help you do it. We'll show you how to do it. And we'll go from there.
Thank you.
And again, like I said, I want to thank all of you for being here and asking such great questions. It's important to be involved. I realize that to some degree I'm preaching to the choir about people being involved here, but the biggest thing you can do is pass on this energy and this interest to people around you, right? That's how, anytime real changes happen, anytime the underdog comes out ahead, that's how it happens. But not by what I do, but what people like you do. So, and again, I thank you all for your time, and I applaud you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Keller. Thank you.